Although CTR didn't do as well commercially as Warped, Crash was still at the height of its popularity, which is why many gamers found it surprising to hear that Naughty Dog had sold off the Crash Bandicoot license. Why did they do this? Well, it was because Naughty Dog became an in-house developer for Sony, which meant poor old Crash got the boot. What followed after is the video game equivalent of a mental breakdown. Crash's popularity nosedived, and his reign at the top of the video game food chain followed directly behind him. But what exactly is it that caused Sony's golden boy to become an embarrassment? Well, in my opinion, it boils down to these main factors. The first is the fact that soon after Crash was sold off, he wasn't a PlayStation exclusive anymore. In fact, Crash only had one last game that was exclusive to the PlayStation, and that was called Crash Bash. This game was very similar to something like Mario Party or whatever, and you play minigames. It's very much a multiplayer game. This was the first Crash game to disappoint me. The charm that a party game like Crash Team Racing had was completely removed, and it just wasn't fun to play. In fact, I found it boring, and the story was so uninspired it's untrue. I could only compare it to two students in a class. One kid tries hard and makes Crash Team Racing. The other kid is sat next to him and tries copying him. He has the gist of it, but he doesn't execute it right, and he made Crash Bash. Strangely, this game has a bit of a cult following, but hey, we all have our own opinions, and I steer clear of this game. I give it a 3 out of 10. As the sixth generation of games made their way to the stores in 2001, Crash's newest game, Crash Bandicoot The Wrath of Cortex, was released and was hauled out to his enemy Nintendo, but it was also hauled out to longtime computer company Microsoft on their new system named the Xbox. Now, Wrath of Cortex was the first platforming game for Crash since 1998, and as a platformer it's a good game, a damn good game. The problem with it though is that the fact that it's too similar to Warp. No, scratch that, it's almost identical. Even the power-ups are exactly the same. The story though isn't as good, but unlike with Bash, I have to take my hat off to the developers for at least trying to do something different. It revolves around a new villain who's working for Cortex named Crunch. He's also a Bandicoot. In fact, he's everything that Crash was going to originally be if the plan from the first game worked. The problem is though, Crunch isn't very well hyped. He's actually the first boss in the game. He's also the second boss, and the third. Actually, he's every boss in the game. What happened to people like Tiny and n-tranced? The decent villains? Why they become obstacles in certain levels? That's it. The story is what brought the score down in this game, as it knocked it down to a 6 out of 10 for me. As well as being hauled out to other home consoles, Crash was also put on the Game Boy. He actually had 3 games on the handheld system. The first was called Crash Bandicoot The Huge Adventure, also known as the XS Across the Pond. As a handheld, it's a good game. The graphics are good and the gameplay is enjoyable, but just like Wrath of Cortex, it feels like an inferior remake of Warped. So I'll give this about a 7 out of 10. Then a year later, the GBA got a direct sequel named Crash Bandicoot 2, n-tranced. Now, before I even get into this game, I have to say, why did they name it Crash Bandicoot 2? There's already a Crash Bandicoot 2. In fact, that was like 5 years before this one. I'm sure they didn't forget about it. After all, Crash 2 introduced Coco, who's been in every game since. Anyway, the actual game itself is good. In fact, it's like the original Crash 2. This one is better than the first. It's more original, and the story is refreshing, as it's the first game to not feature Cortex in any way. I mean, he's mentioned once, but that's it. Instead, the main villain this time is n-tranced, one of my personal favourite villains. Visually, it's the same as the first one, but it takes what the first one was good at and builds on it. I give it 8 out of 10. The final GBA game released was called Crash Bandicoot Purple, Ripto's Rampage, better known as Crash Bandicoot Fusion here in the UK. This game is one of those dreaded crossovers, and Crash crosses with Spyro the Dragon. Now, Crash and Spyro have a long history together. In fact, in Crash Warped, if you punch in a certain code, you can play a demo of the first Spyro game. But having their paths crossed isn't the best thing. The story is okay, I guess, but there's definitely been better stories in the series. Saying that, there's been worse too. But the game is very similar to Crash Bash. Instead of having levels, the entire game is made up of minigames, and having Crash collect cards which you trade using the Spyro version of the game. Yes, for some reason they took the Pokemon approach to this game, where the games are named after colours and the only way you can beat it is by having a friend. Anyway, this game is pretty weak, but in my opinion it's stronger than Crash Bash for the story alone. 4 out of 10. So along with Crash no longer being a console mascot, what else was it that could have made him lose his popularity? Well, it could be the fact that these new developers don't use any imagination and just copy what the Naughty Dog games did. I've mentioned Wrath of Cortex and The Big Adventure, but another game is Crash Nitro Kart, which is basically a 6th generation remake of Crash Team Racing, but not done as well. The graphics are good and they did have a few interesting ideas, like the ability to drive on walls and actually racing with a team partner. But in the long run, it just makes me wish I was playing the classic PS1 game. For some reason, it's just more fun when it's free-for-all racing instead of having to work with someone. Unfortunately, folks, this is really the main point where I lost it with the Crash franchise, because they made one particular game, Crash Tag Team Racing. Yet another knockoff of Crash Team Racing. I mean, the names are nearly fucking identical as it is. I didn't even bother playing this game, so I'm afraid I can't give you my own opinion on it. All I can say is that from the screenshots and videos I've seen, it looks like a pile of wank. Another thing that ruined the Crash franchise was that after tag team racing, Crash and the gang went through a makeover when they were scooped up by Radical Entertainment. All I have to say is, what the fuck? This isn't Crash. Who the fuck is this? Is this fake Crash 2? Look, this is Crash Bandicoot and this is an imposter. Right, I know we're updating the character, making him more modern, right? It worked with Spider-Man in his films, it worked for Batman in the Chris Nolan series, but this didn't work. This isn't Crash. What the hell are those? Are they tattoos? Look at Coco, look at Coco, she's a fucking slut. Oh my god. Who the fuck is that? No. No, it can't be. No. Tiny? No, it can't be. Tiny, what the hell did they do to you?
Crash, I really am cross with you. I'm just trying to do my job, and you go and cause all this chaos. I'm sorry, but I'm gonna have to eat your face.
Oh my god, he's gay. They turned Tiny, the fucking tiger, into a homosexual. Are you fucking kidding me? This is Tiny. Not this. Tiny, not Tiny. Tiny, not Tiny. Why does Aku look like a monkey? Why does Uka look like some 5-year-old put him together with plasticine? I feel like my childhood has been raped. I feel like it has been viciously raped. I feel like somebody has just dug a knife into the heart of my innocent childhood. It hurts. It physically hurts to sit here and look at these characters in the state. In my mind, these are not Crash Bandicoot games. They are rip-offs. Crash Bandicoot died years before these games. This is somebody who stole his identity. I've never played any of the games, but all I can tell from the look of them, just the pure look of them, is that they just fail. 0 out of 10 for all of them. So besides Crash having cosmetic surgery that left him looking worse and should sue the people who did it, there's one last thing that possibly killed the games. Back in the 90s, the rage was to have platforming video games, but that was the 4th and 5th generation of video games. We're in the 7th, and you look at the popular games around today: GTA 4, Halo, Gears of War, Call of Duty, even the Guitar Hero Rock Band series. None of these are platformers. Platforming games just aren't popular as they used to be, but somebody forgot to tell Radical this, as they keep churning out these platform games. Crash needs to change his format, not his appearance, to get his popularity back up.
When will you ever learn, you miserable bandicoots?